clock has it at 1 minute after 4, as does my watch. So we'll call the meeting to order. And are there any declarations of interest for this meeting? Seeing none, we'll proceed then to chair's remarks. I have very little to report, except that the township has received the resignation of Bill Stewart from the Economic Development Committee. As I think everyone knows, he's now the, I believe it's interim executive director of the Gananoque and Thousand Islands Chamber of Commerce. So it would have been a rather difficult thing for him to serve in both roles. Of course, he's welcome to come to present to this committee and to observe at any time, but he has officially resigned the office. So we'll have to make council aware of that to the minutes, and council will act as it will. Speaking of minutes, can we have an adoption of the minutes, a motion to adopt the minutes? Chris Cunningham moved, seconder. Thank you, Ray Belanger. Are there any amendments, corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the business. We do have the budget, the draft budget recommendations and priorities from last time that we looked at and that have been reviewed not only by staff, but also by a working group consisting of Chris Cunningham, Ray Belanger, and myself. So we met with Marnie and Kim between our last meeting and today and reviewed a draft spreadsheet of this type. So I'm going to propose that we move into that item of business. The second item of business that we have is the schedule of meetings as per our discussion from last time. And we actually have a third item of business, which I would like to defer, if possible, until our colleague Bo Passy is able to join us. He's apparently got a tire emergency that is being dealt with. But that is the matter of the township's membership in the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission. So I'm going to open a discussion on the 2022 budget or work plan. And I would ask either Marnie or Kim to speak to this document if possible.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. What you see in front of you is a work plan as much as it is a budget. When we met, we had a conversation about the addition of a couple of points of information, which unfortunately just in our efforts to make sure that we're reviewing all the numbers succinctly, we did not have the time necessarily to go back for the year-over-year review. What we tried to do was, you will see that there are 3 or 4 bands of color. And what we tried to do was align that with the identified strategic priorities of agriculture, housing, and accommodation or tourism. Furthermore, what we tried to do was align this with the strategic initiatives if we're supporting, sustaining, growing, and identified what the deliverables attached to every one of those activities would be. Some of them are a little bit more nebulous in terms of staff time, but again, that is a bit of a moving target for us at this particular point. When budget is finally approved, we'll know what resources were being allocated. So again, this is just a draft so that this committee can kind of see where we're proposing to invest our time and our resources for the 2022 calendar year.
Okay. So perhaps one initial question is, how does this budget of $101,650 compare to the previous year's budget?
Pardon me, I just jumped right in there. I totally blew decorum, Madam Chair. My apologies. Basically, this budget is about $100,000 lower than the budget was last year. The key reason for that being is that in the 2021 budget, we'd included funding for both CIP as well as the sports tourism strategy. Neither of those projects happened. So one was valued at about $70,000 and the other one was valued at $30,000, owing to the fact that we wanted to back up a little bit in terms of the inventories based on our assessment, the STEAM assessment for sports tourism. We knew that this wasn't the year to go ahead and try to redo that strategy, but instead we need to get our ducks in a row behind the scene with some of that inventory work that you'll see here in front of you. So that's really the biggest difference that you will see in the budget year over year, is that $100,000 difference. Staffing largely has not changed. Our core admin costs are largely not changing. Our tourism and visitors center are largely unchanged. And the money that we'd invested in this particular year in a partnership project with GAN, the Economic Innovation Project, will be sunsetting in December of this year, but we've included money instead for the wayfinding sign program. So we're swapping out one OMAFRA funded project with another OMAFRA funded project, but those would be the significant changes year over year.
Sorry, just to add to that, Kim, you mentioned the visitors. The budget for the visitors service has increased by $6,000 over last year. So it's going from 12 to 18.
Okay. So this working document is aligned with the three priorities in the economic development strategy of the township. It is evident that the membership in the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission is not part of the budget anymore. So just in case anyone missed that, council at its last meeting, may it not have been in the last council meeting, but at its mid-October meeting, passed a motion to withdraw from the corridor. So that will be effective in the middle of November of this year. So that is not part of the work plan. I'm going to open it up now to questions and comments by members of the committee. Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What are the chances of this going through? Is it going to be trimmed from here? Is there another round of discussions on this?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I'm really not entirely sure, to be fair at this point, Chris. I think we're getting closer, I think would be a fair statement. So if there are changes, and again, please don't hold me to this, I don't believe that they would be significant in nature at this point. However, the full budget document does go to council on November 18th. And a lot can change in a month in terms of priorities and emerging issues and whatnot.
So just,
Yes,
if I may, through you, Madam Chair, just to add to that, this is our draft. This has not gone to council.
Okay.
So, but based on what we've put in here, we've largely stayed in line with the budget from last year in terms of the amounts that we've budgeted, and the tasks that are in there we feel are achievable based on what we can do. So I think what we've put in here obviously is what we're hoping for council to approve and what we think is likely in line with what was, we tried to go with a similar budget to last year's, knowing that it's a tight budget. And so I think that we've lined up with that.
Just a follow-up, Madam Chair, if I may. And
Yes.
I haven't gone through this with the colors, but the first thing on this is the pop-up farmers market. I think I've mentioned this before. Does it have to be pop-up?
Through you, Madam Chair, for this particular year, Chris, it will have to be a little bit more pop-up in nature. That's the agreement that we have with our partners at Front of Young and with the Ontario government. However, we really see the full implementation of this project an opportunity to identify one or two key locations that would then become those key locations. Really what we want to do is measure, where do we have high traffic? Where's their value for our vendors? That will be a big one, because if they're not seeing value in spending their time to show up, I think we would have some challenges. We recognize from some of the work that Laurel had done when she was with us that that was one of the concerns, right? If the vendor doesn't see the foot traffic, they're often out there as early as 4 a.m. trying to pick produce to be at market for 8. It will inform also time of year, and really what we want to do is also use this as an opportunity to explore cost and cost recovery and whatnot. So how do we begin to maybe build in a sustainable, albeit probably very part-time, market coordinator sort of function? Because we know based on the last market that we had here in Lansdowne, really the challenge that we have with these markets coming and going, and we've heard the same from our partners at Front of Young, is the volunteer burnout. So we'll have a really enthusiastic person come in for a year or two, and then they wane and the market starts to die. And then you flatlined. And I think that up and down is a huge disservice. So long story short, that's sort of, it will be pop-up for this year, but with the goal of becoming 1, 2, or 3 permanent locations over the long term.
Great, thank you.
Terry Childs, yeah.
Just to follow up on Chris's comments on the pop-up, how much notice is going to be given? Like, we're going to know the day before where there may be a market, and how is that going to be advertised? It would be easy for the suppliers, but not for the potential attendees.
Certainly, and through you, Madam Chair, really the goal is to re-recruit for this position. Our market coordinator is no longer with us. I think we communicated that at a previous meeting. And so my goal is now that I have a few other major projects sunsetting on my desk right now, is to start the re-recruitment. And my goal is to have somebody in as soon as possible, really. I'm anticipating mid to end December, if not January 1. And one of the first things that they're going to be doing is that aligning or identifying all the community events that will in fact be happening. And we know a lot of them are coming back online for 2022. That will then inform our market schedule. And we're going to go immediately in January and February, identify vendors and align vendors with those markets. So that what we're hopeful for is that by March, we're communicating the full summer schedule, so that it won't be these one-offs, or if there are, it's an added value thing, but that we have a core list of 15, 25 events, whatever that's going to look like, that we know are in fact happening, and that they can be well marketed in advance.
So is there a plan for that marketing? Is it just going to be random Facebook ads? Is it going to be mailers, newspaper, radio?
Madam Chair, what we would include as part of that, we've already printed sandwich boards, or like the real estate sort of signs that would be used leading up to the locations. We will use social media. Driftscape app will be using our newsletter. Front of Young will be using their newsletter as well. They have an email list as well as a print distribution. We have print distribution. My FM radio will be continuing with that through next year. And then when we publish the spring and summer recreation guide, we'll probably have a 1-page on there. And that does also get mailed out to every household in our municipality.
Thank you. And then sticking with agriculture, the summit fall 2022. So were there any results ever quantified from the original summit that we had a few years ago? And are we anticipating we're going to get the same results, different results? Is there a purpose to the summit that's different from the last summit?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. This summit was kind of somewhat schemed up based on the success of our last one. Actually, we had very strong numbers. Evaluations were incredibly positive. I couldn't actually lay my hand on that evaluation document, but we did do a full summary, and we did have, I think, a reasonably high attendance rate. Part of the intent of the fall summit is to, as we're working on the pop-up farmers market, speak with a lot of the food producers and others within the agricultural sector about where do they see opportunity for growth and development in our municipality? We anticipate, without having any anecdotal feedback, that agritourism is a real opportunity and it aligns with our strategic pillars. And so I do anticipate that the Fall Summit would focus on agritourism at this particular point. We had Rebecca from the Culinary Food Alliance speak previously. And even if we were to repeat that or something very similar, it had real traction here and again aligns with our strategic priorities. But that would be further informed by some of the outreach that we would be doing early on in the calendar year.
But that was the plan of the original summit. Do we have any quantifiables from that summit? Like, was there any economic growth because of the original summit? Is this going to be, if there wasn't, is this going to be different? So we are hoping to see some economic growth?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just think that this committee is far more focused on those metrics and KPIs, not just a warm and fuzzy evaluation. And so I think what we will be able to do is use this in some of the reading. Pardon me, I'm chatty, but I'm going to try not to take too long. In some of the reading that I was doing as part of the document that's referenced in here, agriculture economic development for communities, one of the key things that needs to happen is real relationship building with our agricultural community. We can't sit here on high and try to tell them what they need, because that will never fly. So this is a real opportunity, I think, over this year in terms of that outreach to go, what do you need? What do you want? What will help you grow? And that this summit hopefully will be in response to that. And then again, picking up the flavor of this committee in particular is building in some of those metrics. What are we looking to try to achieve so that if we were to follow up with those people in a year's time, have some of them participated in markets? Are they looking to do farm tours and so on and so forth?
Other questions? Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Along the theme of your agriculture for next fall, as you're well aware, is the huge event that North Grenville's hosting with the International Plowing Match.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small window. It's only about 5 days, but usually the weekend leading up to that is when a lot of the serious attendees move in and stay. Perhaps with the Front of Young having their en route locations there, especially the one going eastbound leading up, or, it may be a thought to move into the eastbound one leading up to the event, or at least halfway through, and then switch over and catch some leaving. The percentile of attendees would be, I would expect at least 50% west of North Grenville as far as geography. Like, there's a large following to that show. The same people, or core same people tend to come every year, regardless of what the location may be. And attendance varies, of course, with weather being the main factor, but it tends to vary somewhere between 80 and 120,000 people annually.
That's crazy.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to add to Councillor Fody's point, the county has been asked to basically include all of the United County member municipalities in the marketing associated with that. So they will be coming to us. They haven't finalized their ask of the county as to how they are asking for help, but I do know that it will be inclusive of economic development opportunity throughout the United County. So even though the match is based out of North Grenville, that there will be people stay as far away as an hour or more, because there's just not that many places for people to stay. So the town of Gananoque, for example, may be full that weekend because they have enough rooms to catch overflow from Brockville and Prescott and Ottawa, even because they're anticipating that many people will actually stay in the Ottawa area. So the goal is to get them to stay in our county, our United Counties, more so than in the urban centers. So I do know there will be a concerted push. So I'm assuming that Ann Weir from Economic Development will be reaching out to us to provide what we can do to help support that vision.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Other questions and comments on this working document? I have a question which may be unanswerable, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And it's outside the direct purview of this committee, but it's important for economic development. So if we were to think about this budget and then we were to think about what budget and initiatives were on a similar document related to broadband, what would that broadband document look like?
I'll let you know. You go ahead.
Thank you, through you. I can't remember which meeting it was, but we canceled the procurement for obtaining a broadband project partner. In terms of maintaining involvement, we are constantly monitoring what may be going on and what opportunities may come forward as it relates to broadband. However, the direction from the province has been really to take that out of the municipal hands and put it into the hands of the internet service providers. So there was something that was circulated today, an announcement that there would be more information coming forward as it relates to internet service providers and municipalities for options for broadband. If there are further opportunities for broadband, we are ready to move ahead. We have everything in place with the exception of a project partner, but we would need to see the terms and requirements for any provincial or federal programming for broadband services that would come down. Everything we see right now, it's resting entirely with the province, and the implementation will be through the province. They're currently qualifying internet service providers to be able to apply through their procurement process. And what they've done is they've divided the province up into underserviced areas into what they're calling lots. We don't know what those lots look like, but those lots will be what the reverse auction, which is the procurement process that the province is approaching. That's what the internet service providers will be bidding on. So we don't know any of the details of what that process looks like, but should there be any change in approach that would make us eligible to be further applying or further going towards any options for the township, we're monitoring that right now. We haven't included any money specifically in the budget this year for broadband because of all of this. However, should there be an opportunity come forward, we would certainly approach council with a plan in terms of understanding what our requirements and resourcing needs would be. And we would ask for reserve funds to be allocated to that. So it's a moving target right now. But the funds are there if we need them because there is modernization funding that's left over that's in the reserve funds. So if there was a short order, I'm certain that council would support the need for a special meeting to allocate funding if there was an opportunity for us to pursue.
Okay, thank you. So we, look to Rogers and Shaw. It's going to be wonderful. Madam Mayor. Are you? Oh, good. And are you moving? Are you moving to BC to be close to the courts? Oh, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to pin a bow on what Ms. Venditti had said in regards to broadband, and I'm sure my fellow councillor would support what she said, that council has always been very supportive of moving any projects forward. I know there is a number of people out there, naysayers, that continue to provide conjecture about the fact that the project that was undertaken here did not happen because of a lack of attention to detail or commitment of this council. And I emphatically would like to say that that is untrue. We were not made aware of a change in a date, and we have that verbatim from somebody in the ministry. But nonetheless, we can't cry over spilt milk. As Ms. Venditti said, we are prepared to move forward, providing that the funding is available. But right now, we are blocked due to the reverse auction process at the provincial level. And until something changes, we are waiting with bated breath with the Premier's promise of 85% coverage of high speed. So I hope that the municipality of the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands has 85% coverage by the end of this. I'm hopeful, but not delusional. So
Thank you. You too can be chair of Rogers. Other questions? So just to make sure that we're all aware of how this document fits into the overall budget process, would I be correct in my understanding that there would be understanding both at the staff level and at the council level, that this document has been reviewed by the Economic Development Committee and in some form or other has been, shall we say, endorsed, and I haven't actually asked for any kind of a motion. So I'm looking for some clarification about what the process is so that the Economic Development Committee can signal some sort of recommendation to council around priorities for the coming year.
Certainly, and through you, Madam Chair, really, as we well know, and I think when Kate was here, she showed us a snippet of what our internal budget documents look like, and it's nothing like this. So Marnie and I have already kind of submitted the budget to the treasurer, and it's been included in the draft budget that is now complete. Again, what we will be doing is that we've already provided a written narrative that identifies a lot of these projects in here. What we'll do is we'll go back and review, and we can certainly add the fact that within that written narrative that it has been, reviewed by the Economic Development Committee, and that the committee perhaps agrees that it does align with their priorities. Furthermore, we will be doing a PowerPoint presentation to support Kate when she does, or pardon me, our Director of Finance when she delivers the budget or presents on November 18th. So that will be another opportunity for us to kind of have the broader discussion with council so they see how this aligns with strategic priorities and with the approved economic development priorities or economic development strategy that was approved by council just some time ago now. And I would certainly defer to the clerk in terms of process for support. And
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I would just say that if the committee just wanted to provide direction to staff to proceed with the proposed budget as discussed with the committee, since what we've distributed is in a public document, that would be our direction to move forward with what we've talked about.
Are so moved that we move a motion to that we review the working document and support the content of that document as we put the budget.
Yeah, we just need to be careful how that is done because this isn't a public document, so it's just as discussed.
I can further that. Just to say that if we do want to make a motion, we would need to attach this to the minutes. And as I understand it, it's not necessarily for public consumption right now. So I will capture in the minutes that the Economic Development Committee agrees with the recommendations unless anybody has any objectives. I'd also like to note that Vicky is now online. So if you want to ask her for any input as well, just to make sure we get all the members.
Your microphone's not on.
There we go.
I accidentally turned it off. My apologies. Vicky, welcome. Do you have any questions or comments on the working document?
No, I actually have a lot of people on the internet at the moment, so hence why my screen is going to be, video will be off unless I have to speak. But no, I have no further comment.
Thank you. So I seek the pleasure of the committee in terms of, for lack of another technical phrase, your comfort level with the priorities as established.
Madam Chair, I think that, some of these numbers are very firm. They're, this is what it is. Things like a real estate showcase for 5,000, but a small business showcase is 2,500. Where are these numbers coming from?
thank you. Basically, the $5,000 was just a number that admittedly we've thrown in there. We've kind of looked at other events and whatnot. The small business showcase kind of takes into consideration facility rental and refreshments based on an estimated number of people. And the small business showcase, not the small business, the agricultural summit is very similar to what we budgeted back in 15 or 16. So
No, you can't be firm on where these events are going to take place, but can you give us an idea of what kind of venue would be used?
certainly, and through you, Madam Chair, I'm thinking it was around 2 or 3 years ago, the Lyndhurst, Sealy's Bay and District Chamber of Commerce hosted an agricultural expo, small business expo, and they used the Furnace Falls Farm property, and it was incredibly well received. They had indoor venues, outdoor venues, and so we would be looking to once again partner with that particular chamber and host at that location, only because again, it is reflective of the northern part of our community and does provide ample footprint. Additionally, the catering is right on site. So that also makes that a little bit easier. For the agricultural summit, I would be proposing that we use the Lansdowne Community Hall. Simply because we have hosted events there in past and we know that it does work. Now, again, when we speak about the fall 2022 event, we're very hopeful that, of course, the pandemic is well behind us. Of course, this is all subject to change based on fifth wave, whatever that might look like. So we will be looking to alternative ideas and solutions. But we did know that at that particular event, we did have to pay a fee for our keynote speaker. So again, we were taking that into consideration with some of the figures.
So,
Yes, Marnie.
thank you. Just to add to that, as mentioned previously too, these are not going to be broken down to this level of detail in the budget that's provided to council. So the 5,000 and the 2,000, there's some variability in that in terms of what's allocated to what. And obviously when we're planning these, we're going to be working with the committee in terms of determining what these events are going to look like, what the venues may be. So there's still going to be opportunities for further discussion of location, scope, and those details too.
So Madam Clerk, would you just sort of repeat what you propose to include in the minutes about our discussion of this item? And then I'll simply look for nods.
Sure, thank you, and through you. I'm just writing that the EDC committee members agreed with the recommended EDC budget initiatives, but I put the provision in there that if there are any objections or further comments, members are welcome to submit an email to staff by November 8th. That's ahead of the November 18th budget meeting.
Thank you. Okay, I see nods. So we've nodded this to conclusion. Thank you very much for the work that you've done, Kim and Marnie, on this. Very helpful and much more intelligible than the standard township budget format. So thank you. Might be something to consider for other aspects of budgeting, in my humble opinion. We'll move on to the next item of business, and that is the proposed schedule of meetings of the EDC. Members will recall that at the last minute, at that previous meeting, I guess, I had indicated that I have a commitment on the third Wednesday of every month at the end of the afternoon, which was going to be problematic. And then Terry Childs chimed in that he also had a commitment. So we proposed to change the meeting week from the 3rd to the 4th of each month. The clerk needed to check that this was okay and that there were no conflicts. And as a result, these are the meeting dates that are proposed for 2022. So I think we're probably okay with those. Madam Clerk, are there dates we meet in November, but not in December typically? So for 2021.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, for November, your next meeting is slated for the 17th, no, sorry, 24th, because that's the 4th Wednesday, and we don't have a meeting for December. I just would note too that next year is the municipal election, so that's why September is the last date listed in that year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this requires a motion that the EDC approves the proposed 2022 schedule of meetings as circulated. Is there a mover? Terry Childs, seconder. Chris Cunningham. Any discussion of the motion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I, by the way, will not be able to attend the November the 24th meeting, so I'm looking to my vice chair to hope that you can chair. Oh, we could do a C on 2C thing. I will be in British Columbia. Yeah, exactly. Okay, we will hold that in advance, but we will keep that meeting date as it's consistent with what we have. All right. Okay, I will not. Okay, I would like to add one item of business to our agenda for today. And regrettably, our colleague Bo Passy is not, it seems, able to join us. As I said, he's having some sort of a tire emergency, so he had hoped to attend the meeting. But at its most recent meeting, council essentially ratified the discussion it had at Committee of the Whole to withdraw the township's membership in the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission, as is council's right. We only recommend, we don't decide. But I simply would ask the mayor as her other representative on the corridor, and also as mayor, if she has any comments about what, if anything, this means for any future relationship that the township might have with the corridor, since we had actually sort of negotiated some joint initiatives.
Through you, Madam Chair, as far as relations are concerned, they don't exclude anybody who's not a member of the corridor now. I'm sure that they are disappointed in the fact that we're not paying to play, if you will, anymore. But if anybody had the option of watching the debate that happened at council, they took the work that was done here at the committee level, in the recommendations that were made and the work that was done. And some of council felt frustrated in the fact that the corridor did not seemingly, not that they didn't take it seriously, but that the majority of the things that were asked of them were not addressed. And that, in that vein, I believe we've been a member for 6 years in total. Yeah, 6 years in total. So if you look at what we've essentially, for rounding purposes, is $40,000 a year, that's a lot of money that we've put in over 6 years, and with what value. And has there been work done and movement made in other municipalities? Absolutely. We haven't seen any direct result here. There's been one instance of assistance for an existing business to get some additional help from federal funding. But other than that, it's been ancillary. And I realize that the regional approach is to be that we're all banding together so that we can have the mutual benefit. Having said that, considering budget, the leniency of our budget, not leniency, the lean nature of the budget, we are looking for efficiencies, and we had to be a bit more pragmatic going forward. And it seemed that it was the will of council that they felt that the value for the dollars that we were putting into this project were not being received for the members or the taxpayers of Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. We felt, Councillor Fody and I voted in favor of the motion because we did want to give the corridor another small window to rectify the issue, along with, I forget who we were outnumbered on the vote. So it was defeated, and the decision was made by the majority of council. So under that, we have to take direction that way. And unfortunately, we haven't received any response back from the corridor since we've made them notified, which is ironic because the first time we notified them of giving notice, they were on the phone the next day type thing. So I don't know what that means. I'm just giving you that extra information so that you're aware. But at this point in time, it was a clear message that we got from council.
Thank you very much. That helps the committee understand. Yes, Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It really is too bad that Bo is not here because both you and Bo have put an enormous amount of work into this. I think you gave the board some kind of structure, some kind of sense of what you should be moving forward towards. But in the end, we, Madam Chair, very well put a great motion together from this committee. I have no misunderstanding of what council did. I can understand very much their impatience with the corridor. If you recall, we gave the chair of this corridor very specific instructions as to what we wanted to see in a contract. And the contract that came back was just rearranging the deck chairs. There was absolutely nothing there. So this is on Charlie Nino's head, as far as I'm concerned.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll be brief. Thank you for those words. We did want to give them the window. I think that was there, but the majority of council disagreed with the two of us, and it escapes me who the other positive vote was for. But by no means do I want to undermine Mr. Passey's commitment to this overall and his real depth of knowledge and his asset to that corridor project. And he can still be a member of the project if he's appointed by another municipality. It doesn't have to be specifically, you don't have to live in specific municipalities if it's based on an appointment. So anybody could appoint him. Having said that, he is a driving force for that corridor and a key player. And I hope that by no means was this a direct slight against Mr. Passey, whether intentional or unintentional. They certainly not intentional, I should say, but we want to make sure that the corridor understands that when we're dealing with taxpayers' money, it's their money and we have to be accountable to it. And I know that this committee worked very hard to try to better that. And I do thank you for those comments because Bo put an unbelievable amount of effort into trying to move it forward. Having said that, when you have a number of individuals who are business owners and used to making decisions on the fly, it's incredibly frustrating. And I know that Bo has felt that frustration. But nonetheless, there's still good things to be done by that corridor. We are at the very western edge of that corridor. And maybe someday it will make sense for us to go back in. But that will be up to future councils and future committees to make recommendations. It's not to say that we won't continue to keep our eye on the movement that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Ray.
Having watched the Committee of the Whole on YouTube, I wanted to give a shout out to Councillor Foti for his support for this committee. Those were kind words and we appreciate it. And I think I speak for all of us when we do say thank you.
Councillor Foti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ray, for those comments. No, if you've watched it, it's pretty self-explanatory what took place. I don't hold any ill will toward my fellow councillors for voting against the way they did. The reason was obvious, and this has been contentious since we've been elected, because as has been stated by most everybody at the table, council table, that what are we getting for our money? What I would like to see, this doesn't preclude St. Lawrence from sending something our way. You know, I'm no fisherman, but you throw a little bait in front of the right fish, they're going to bite. So I would put a challenge out there to have the St. Lawrence Economic Development Committee keep working, give us a reason to come back in. That's what we lacked. That was the key element right there. I don't expect to see a new General Motors plant put up just north of the village. I prefer they don't. But at the same point, I think there needs to be something. And as Corey says, there's some pretty powerful people sit at that table. And I understand the draw that Johnstown and Prescott area has. And it's only going to grow. I was just made privy to a major statement. I'm sure our worship here to my left maybe already knows about that, but Johnstown's about to grow in leaps and bounds again. And there's another even larger project that the province is working in. So there's still opportunity, I believe, for us to realize something from this. And I hope St. Lawrence realizes that by involving us would be a quick way to get us back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foti. Terry Childs.
Has, in response to Terry's comments, has the council actually thought about drafting a letter to the corridor, sort of explaining their thoughts behind leaving and the ability, that there's that potential will to come back if it can be shown that there's a benefit to the council. Next year, there'll be a new council, there'll be a new economic development committee, may or may not be the same people, but that way it doesn't close the doors. It allows for that conversation to happen as we step out, whether it be permanently or temporarily, and then gives them an invitation to invite us back in.
Madam Mayor.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think that can be done. I think it has to be specific, though. We can't commit to coming back in just because that would have to come back to council for approval. But there's no reason that I can't draft an email up to go to the corridor to say, we, haltingly remove ourselves from your fold, but not to say that if the right opportunity was to be presented back to us, that we wouldn't reconsider in the future. I can work with staff on a worded email to that effect that can be presented to the corridor executive, which is they postponed their meeting that was supposed to happen today to next week. So we can get that in time. So that's a point well taken. And I think that's something that we can do easily. They have been made aware of the motion and they would have been able to watch the video as well. But nonetheless, I can put something in writing.
It may allow them the opportunity to come back to us in the future
without prejudice.
Yeah.
Yep. Fair enough. Thank you.
Ray.
Well, one of the things I found a little bewildering in the council's deliberations were usually when Plan A is not working, you say, well, okay, let's go to Plan B. In this case, it was Plan A isn't working, end of Plan A. What are we going to replace those efforts with? There was no guidance to committee on what we should pursue next or what would be another good idea to try. It was simply a cold cutoff of efforts and with no real direction to suggest going forward.
It's possible. I'm not sure, but it's possible the council would be looking to the EDC to come up with Plan B. Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Through you. Point is well taken because I realize that that's a considerable amount of funding. But the other thing that I guess that I'm always very aware of when it comes to economic development, we can't, under the Municipal Act, benefit one business over another specifically by giving grants or what have you. So what you're asking to do isn't insurmountable, but it's actually difficult to try to put money into something that spurs economic development. In actual fact, in most cases, it's taking the red tape away and providing a soft landing for people to come here, get information so that they can get the help they need to build the building that they need to through the building department, or to deal with community and business services, to put them in touch with the other services that already exist for funding purposes, whether it be through the Community Development Corporation, whether it be Small Business Enterprise Center. Those are the connections that really help spur along small business. So while I take your point about what are we going to do with those extra funds that we're not doing, it isn't a matter of saying, okay, well, we'll help this pocket of businesses this way because we're limited at what we can do. It's not to say that there aren't ways that we can do things like supporting. Maybe there is something we could do with the small business showcase that you're talking about. Maybe that's bringing in some superstar speaker that would draw other small businesses from outside of the municipality. Who knows, they might want to relocate or that sort of thing. There's lots of different ideas about that, but it isn't just as simple as cutting this $40,000 off and then reallocating it to. You're right. We're always looking for opportunity and feedback from this committee, but it isn't just a matter of just spending it somewhere else.
Terry Charles.
Just to comment on that, could that, what you just started your whole sentence on, could that not be plan B? To work on reducing red tape, to work on allowing advertising that we have opportunities here. Like if we have that $40,000, it's we know that we can't give it to someone to bring them here, but we can use it to advertise the township, that type of thing.
I sense that Marnie Venditti wants to say something.
Sorry, I didn't get a seat at the table today. Thank you, through you. I would note that when council was having their discussions, and it may have been Councillor Gurrell that brought it up, was that when he was looking at the corridor in terms of attraction of new industry and the priorities that the Economic Development Committee had identified and council endorsed last year, he felt that there was also somewhat of a misalignment in terms of the priorities that the Economic Development Committee has identified and council supported are based on the strengths of our area and what we think we can do and what we can achieve. And so I think some of what council's discussion was around was, let's focus on what we know we can do and our areas and strengths. And so I think some of that gives us the opportunity to take a step back and look at what we can do and all of the work that we've done over the last year with our working groups and our priorities. I guess the other thing I would add in terms of reducing red tape and making things easier in the area, council has endorsed, and we currently have somebody looking at an efficiency review in terms of some of our processes within the corporation. I know that one of my priorities for the 2022 year is spending some time getting our house in order in terms of doing just that, mapping our processes, making sure that we have guidelines and standards so that if a developer is coming to the area, they know what our expectations are right off the bat, and we're prepared to be able to help them and assist them right away. So a lot of what you're talking about are a lot of things that we can do and that we currently do have in our work plans that we just need to give more focus and attention to. Yes, I think we have that plan B. It's just a matter of making sure that we're aligning our work plans to advance what that plan B is and working with the committee to do that.
Yes, Kim.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And just to one step further, what Marnie is saying is that communications will also be a very big focus next year. And so as Marnie, develops her policy and tears down that red tape, for example, we're going to be a half step behind her, making sure that that's clearly communicated. Updates to the website, through our newsletter, but more broadly, this is why you see, for example, the developers real estate workshop in here, so that we are trying to build the tools, as Marnie says, get our house in order, but then to be able to push that out. So I think by tag teaming, we're hoping to realize some success through the end of next year, certainly.
Okay, yes, Chris.
Just by way of observation, Madam Chair, as a member of this committee, I have to be concerned that we're spending $100,000 less this upcoming year than we have in the past. We finished our relationship with the corridor one way or another. We've lost a dedicated economic development officer with no reflection on my friends, but that's a concern for me that we're losing here.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll speak to that. Money doesn't equal outcome.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that the the optics of losing $100,000 in an economic development budget looks like we're slashing and burning just economic development. In actual fact, it's about making sure that the money that we do have is being utilized appropriately. So as Kim mentioned earlier, the $100,000 that's missing from the budget, $70,000 was CIP, or sorry, yeah. So the CIP, one was CIP community improvement plans, and the other one was sport tourism. And the sport tourism, the difficulty with that is that there needs to be some specific, very dedicated work to be done on that. And I know that they haven't abandoned that altogether, but that where we put the cart before the horse, because we really didn't know what we were getting into. And part of that, not knowing what we're getting into, that placeholder of $70,000 was put there because there was a real push to want to do that. But then when they canceled the meetings out in Edmonton and would have been Ottawa this past year, those were where Kim would have actually gotten her sort of her marching orders saying, you need this, this, and this, and this. And we put those placeholders in place to be able to say that we had money in the bank ready to go if we needed to pull the trigger on a consultant, if she needed an extra body to execute that plan, just on a contract basis, but that we were ready to go. Now we know we have to do the inventory first, and that is actually a smaller cost. So that's why that 70,000 is cut out. And the community improvement plans for the 30,000, we have a lot of the community groups that are working on these community improvement plans, not so in a structured way, but are continuing to beautify, work with local businesses to help build those local businesses, and just through local support of that. Whereas we don't have to throw $30,000 at it to get it to keep moving in the local communities. There's other ways that we can do that. But so I would challenge you to think about it not as that we've lost $100,000 from the budget, but if there is something that has merit that needs to come to council, that needs to be done. And if there's something specific that this committee wants to do and it has real value, you bring it to the committee, have it approved, and bring it to the council. And if it's something that's going to obviously move economic development in the township, then it's a no-brainer for us as councillors to say, yeah, that makes total sense. Let's find the $50,000 to do that. So it just means that we haven't just thrown money in the budget for the sake of having a placeholder. And so if you could think about it somewhat differently, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, I think this has been a very good discussion. Vicky, do you have any comments that you would like to make?
Sorry. No comment. I understand people's frustration, but I think actually the idea of, let's look to the future, put this in the rear view and try to come up with some other strategies, I think is a good one.
Okay, thank you. So I think it has been a good discussion, and I want to thank members of the committee for their diligence in actually watching the committee of the whole meeting where this was discussed. It was important to see the way that council deliberated on this, and so it made our discussion a little more fulsome and a little easier perhaps. But I think that this matter is now probably closed for us for the time being. So thank you very much, everybody. Let's proceed to the next item on our agenda, and that's information items, specifically first the staff update.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to jump right off. One of the documents that I've left in front of you, you will see is the 2021 Economic Development Summit agenda for the upcoming fall season. I would like to bring to your attention the Bill Thake Memorial Economic Development Leadership Award. Our recommendation, once again, has stood and made the short list. So congratulations to this committee, but a particular congratulations to Sylvan and Urick for making the short list. So we will be facilitating registrations again this year. I anticipate what we did last year is, I believe, Councillor Fody, Mayor Gatke, Marnie, myself, with our new CAO at the time, we gathered upstairs at the fire hall and sat together and watched the summit. So I would like to extend that invitation to committee members to join us this year. Again, trying to be frugal. We'd purchased the one registration. However, if you are unable to join us here and would like to participate remotely, please let me know and I would be happy to facilitate your registration as well. But I wanted to make sure that you had a copy of the agenda in front of you. There's a few things that have caught my eye, but I know it's not everybody's cup of tea at the same time. So if perhaps within the next week or 10 days, you could let me know, I could make sure that those registrations are completed and that if you need a Zoom link of your own, that we can get that to you. I also wanted to share with you that our strategic plan will be coming to council for adoption at Committee of the Whole on November 1st and ratified on November 8th. Just as a heads up, should you want to watch that one. And I really don't have a whole lot to say. I just wanted to share with you that I've been sitting as a member of a newly formed committee focusing on the multi-use recreational path, the St. Lawrence Parks Commission. And they've been trying to do a lot of work in terms of winter maintenance, because they see that trail as a huge economic driver in our neighborhood. And so they've got a committed group of volunteers together and they've been meeting regularly. I've been attending as a staff representative on behalf of the municipality, as has Friend of Young, with staff support from the Parks Commission. And so it looks like they're going to be looking to winter signage for continued use for snowmobiles and some consideration for winter maintenance. There's still some discussion, but I wanted to make sure that that was on the radar of this committee, because I do think that that's important for our neighborhood. The other one that I wanted to bring to your attention is we were speaking previously about a big paddling event happening in Kingston in 2022. But I see also the National Pickleball Tournament will be in Kingston in 2022. It was just announced in the last couple of weeks. And I know we have some very avid pickleballers here. So I do see that as an opportunity to perhaps do some outreach and encourage some of those people to come visit us. So I will be trying to follow up with their event coordinators and encourage them to day trip out in our neighborhood.
Marty.
Thank you. Just to give you a quick update on some of the development activity that's happening. We had a county's planning meeting last week with all of the planners from the lower tier municipalities. And we went over the number of consent applications that have been submitted over the year. We're currently at 37 applications, which is almost twice what we would normally receive in an average year. So there's been a lot of new lot creation within our township specifically, and that was highlighted in the county meeting. I'd also like to let the committee know that last week we issued site plan control approval for a new office building to be constructed on the Keogh Marine site. So there's a new office building going in to support their operation. And I've had a number of inquiries over the last few weeks, couple over the last few months. We're getting a lot of interest in terms of storage facilities within the township, be they boat storage or just climate controlled storage for people. So there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of activity going on right now. We don't have applications for all of this, but a lot of people are starting to prepare for what they might want to start doing next year. So as we receive applications, I'll continue to bring updates to the committee.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Any questions, Terry Childs? Yes.
Yeah, two of them. One for Marty. You may not be able to answer this. A couple of months ago, I got a bunch of emails regarding I think it was called Granite Ridge, a subdivision behind Ganvet's, the bottom of Highway 32. Mm-hmm. Is there an official subdivision going in there, or is this just speculation from Toronto real estate people?
Highway 32, that was speculation.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do know that the property has been sold and there is a sold sign on it. We haven't had any applications.
Okay.
Which property is this? Excuse me, I didn't hear what you said.
The one that's visible from the 401, there's a trail.
No. If you drive down where the memorial, I forget his name, where the headstones are made, right behind there.
Thanks, by thanks. Or leaders.
Yes. Yeah, right behind there. I'd gotten a bunch of stuff from a woman in Toronto. that had, there was subdivisions going in and there was all sorts of
Yeah,
things.
we're
going
talking
in
about
there.
the same property.
Oh, okay.
It extends down to the 401 and goes
Oh,
pretty
okay.
far north.
Okay.
That's not happening.
Okay.
I guess the other thing I would note is we are very close to also issuing final subdivision approval for River Valley Estates Phase 2,
Okay.
which is another 6 lots.
Good.
Or
Great.
8, I can't remember the number.
My second question was to Kim, and if you remember the last EDC, I kept harping on about the same thing and you just brought it up again. So as we see the parkway, the multi-use trail is very good for economic development. Has there been any discussion to maintain and keep the kayak launch at Lambton's Bay?
I don't know that that's come up in the conversation, but I will add a note to circle back around. I did also want to add that we will be meeting with the new owners of the Camp Hyento property in about 2 weeks' time as well to talk to them. That property has also recently changed hands. So we're going to learn a little bit more about what they're proposing and see what supports that we can offer.
Interesting. My daughter's an alumna of Camp Hyento. Okay, council update, please. Madam Mayor.
You want me to take a run at this? Okay, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I just brought up the last meeting just so that I can be as concise as possible. Obviously, we already know how things turned out for the corridor, but I think the real sort of the flagship that came through both through committee of the whole and through council was asset management. And I know that we've been talking about it in a cursory manner all along, but I cannot impress upon you how far ahead our municipality is in comparison to a number of other municipalities, both locally and throughout the province. The asset management process in itself will provide us with almost real-time data as to what we are required to have in financial terms to maintain the assets of the municipality. That's the road network, that's the buildings, and all the infrastructure that we currently have and potentially may want to have in the future. And why is this important? Well, there's something that people talk about is the infrastructure deficit that a lot of municipalities have, because either we've deferred maintenance, not done what we should to buildings or roads, or upgrades that would have liked to have happened, whether it be a gravel road to a surface treated road. And if there's no plan in place, we can't budget accordingly for it. So unfortunately, sitting here at this table and then sitting at county, I'm very pleased to note that our senior management staff has worked so incredibly hard to get the data input into the system, because that is the crux of the issue, is getting the correct data to say, this is the shape this building is in, this is the shape this road is in, this is the shape that this truck is in order to inform the computer program that we spent 120 some thousand, I believe, of the modernization funding that the province gave us. We allocated it to citywide for Public Sector Digest. They have a very specific program, and the treasurer, along with the senior management team, has put in a lot of time getting that information in so that we can get a bunch of information back out to say, these are the things that need to happen. These are the priorities that are needed in order to make sure that our infrastructure doesn't further deteriorate. The good news is we were ahead in some places and we're behind in others. So what it's going to do, and I think once the next budget comes forward based on some preliminary conversations with management, we're going to see a huge influx or investment, I should say, in capital projects over the next couple of years, even the next 5 years, I would say, depending on what future councils decide to do. But I know that hopefully we can take stack recommendations that are coming down the pipe and sort of play a little catch up. The other good news is because of the prudence of the previous council decisions for the last few years, we have a good chunk of funding sitting here. It doesn't preclude us from borrowing, and not in with my other job, my other hat. Borrowing right now is very cheap. So we're going to be looking at options of whether we should borrow some of these funds and leave some of our money in reserves. But but also going through the whole exercise of not having very much coming in from the casino that we had been highly dependent on for a number of years has taught us a very valuable lesson, has also allowed us to align our budget more strictly to the levy, more so than through the casino funding. So the casino funding, as it starts to trickle back in, and I'm sure that most people might have seen that article, we'd only budgeted 100,000 in revenue from the casino for this year. Our first payment, I think, was 52,000, and the second payment was 275. So we got considerably more than what we had budgeted, which is prudent, because we budgeted low on the revenue and the revenue came in high, which will allow us to fund capital projects, which is what those funds are for in the first place. So really the focus was on asset management. Also another feather in the cap of the staff who've worked very, very hard. We now have a collective agreement in place with our unionized staff people. This was 3 years of very hard work. It really will allow us to move forward because everything was sort of in limbo from a management point of view. So we thank the staff, and both the union employees and the management had brought this to fruition. Transfer payment with the province. What was that? I'm trying to remember. But from Steve Clark. Oh, right.
COVID, the ICIP. funding.
ICIP. I apologize. Yes. So we continue to receive funding from the province. Some of it is in ICIP, as well as we got OMPF. Although, interestingly enough, the OMPF funding, the Ontario Municipal Fund Partnership funding, that I believe is going up marginally this year. So if you look at it from an inflationary point of view, yeah, it's $6,000 it's going up, which I'm trying to remember the full amount, but all in all, it's not keeping up with inflation. So the costs associated with funding some of these infrastructure projects, it's a delicate balance, and it's amazing what the staff have to do to try to balance all of these different balls that are in the air. We also passed a motion to support other municipalities who are having issues with the federal government trying to get around some taxation. Rather than read the whole thing out, it doesn't really affect us here in this municipality because we don't have large federal institutions that are paying a certain portion of their taxes that they were trying to get waived through COVID. I think it was a $500 difference. It was a very negligible difference for our municipality, but the motion was passed to support our neighboring municipalities and other municipalities who have that issue. And other than that, Ivy Lee, that is a major thing that's going to be happening here in the township in 2022. The design tender was awarded. And why is that important? A lot of the taxpayers on the island properties often wonder what their tax dollars, why do I pay taxes? I get nothing for it. There's a long discussion to have about that. Taxation, when you're driving on roads to get there, providing the staff to make sure that those roads are in good shape, as well as in this particular instance, the Ivy Lee Wharf. That project will probably be in excess of $1 million to have completed in 2022. Once we have the design work completed, we'll be able to go out to tender and have it completed in its entirety, hopefully in 2022. Our wharf was destroyed by contractors, unfortunately, and it sounds very harsh, but I say destroyed in that a hi-ho was banging its shovel on the wharf. And while in regular instances, it should be fine, the problem is that the wharf was constructed over 50 years ago and was not constructed for the weight of the machinery and the different things. And it's meant, that's what that access is there for. It's there for contractors to get material out there. But having said that, we need to make sure that the future design of it will withstand, hopefully none of that. They were just cleaning off the shovel is what they were doing. They're trying to bang the mud off of it, but it went right through the cement. So that's where it becomes a bit of an issue. So we will hopefully have some additional news in regards to Ivy Lee going forward on another matter, which will hopefully assist in all of this. But good things are happening here in the township, especially on the operations side. There's a number of projects that have been completed and redone. There's been a lot of ditching done. There's been, as far as drainage, and anybody who knows anything about roads, if you don't have proper drainage, your road's not gonna withstand a whole lot of rain water. So Marble Rock's been under reconstruction. Junetown Road's been reconstructed. And there's a whole host and list that's coming forward in the 2022 budget. So things are moving. And have I missed anything, Terry? Go ahead.
Thank you. Through your worship. On a phone call that I put into the operations director yesterday, he informed me, and I just happened to bump into him out here today. The Rockport rebuild has actually started. So that'll be key to a lot of the river residents. And so they've already set up shop. It will be the term I use down there. So that project will be underway, and hopefully, I think the window they were looking to get that completed was 6 to 8 weeks.
Correct. It should be done within a month to
Yeah.
8 weeks, or 8 weeks at most.
Prior to freeze up, I assume would be the goal for any contractor working around water. And yes, there is a lot of activity going on. Marnie knows better than most, but it's interesting, when you're out and about talking to business people, some of the comments they make, and right well, it hasn't gone through Marnie's ears yet, but it's coming. So, it's encouraging to know that people, I think our biggest relief, it isn't just affecting this committee, it's affecting all of us worldwide for that matter, that COVID is waning and the numbers are, getting under control. There isn't near the sickness and putting near the pressure on our hospitals. So, with that kind of a uplift in spirit, if nothing else, other than health, it gives people a different outlook toward the future. And I think we're going to be the beneficiaries of that. And just to add to what our mayor has said about the asset management plan, it will be the cornerstone, of from here forward in the future of how I would hope it's how all budgets would be established from here forward. And I think, as you had mentioned, the shortfall in infrastructure, not knowing it's going to come forward to us right here shortly in a full-blown plan. As I talked to our director of operations yesterday, he said the CBAs, the conditions of all our buildings has been brought to them. It's been completed, but it has not been thoroughly assessed yet. And that will be presented to council on the 8th of November at the actual council meeting. He'll be bringing that forward. So, I expect to be scared at that presentation when the assessment of all our township buildings come forward. And maybe it has been bounced around just in suspicion that these numbers would be in a fear factor situation, that's where the comments are coming about borrowed money. And we'll have to look at this in a big scale and see where it is and whether we borrow anything or not. And if so, what for? Anyway, looking forward to what's going to take place here in the next 30, 60 days.
Thank you, Councillor Fody. Chris Cunningham, you had no? Yes, Ray.
Regarding the asset management plan, there's a couple of things that struck me. One of them was I didn't see any reference to divestiture. I mean, if we've got assets that we can't afford to maintenance, it would make sense to try and offload some of them. And the second thing is I didn't see any reference to lease buy analysis. Some business advice I was given years ago, you don't want depreciating assets on your books. If something's going to be worth less tomorrow, then let somebody else own it and lease it from them. So I don't know if that comes into play. Perhaps there are buildings, whatnot, that we can sell and lease back. I don't know, but that seems to me to be something definitely worth examining, especially since we're looking at a potential tax increase to pay for what we already own. So,
Madam Mayor.
Excellent question. Thank you. Through you. So the lease buy question that you have, that is actually in place all the time. And a perfect example was that we leased a hi-ho, something this hi-ho this particular year, this operational year. And obviously a lease would be not be under capital because we're not buying it. So it's under operational. So as we were leasing it and utilizing it in such a manner, it made more sense to own rather than lease. So that whole conversation is constantly being had through our operations department. I know for sure whether or not it makes sense for us to buy something or have a contractor come in to do the work. So please rest assured that that's being taken care of or taken into consideration. The second point about divesting assets, that too is on the table. Already this year, we did have a conversation about whether we would be considering selling Springfield House because of the additional costs associated with maintaining a heritage buildings such as they are, and what that would mean to the tax rate over the long term. As Councillor Fody indicated, the building condition assessment, the BCAs were a very important piece to not only inform asset management as a whole, but to specifically, they go specifically to that particular building and whether it makes sense for us to invest or divest. So that is, even though it wasn't actively spoken about, it is always a consideration that we could sell the building or divest ourselves of that particular asset, whether it be a fire truck, whether it be a building. Obviously, there's certain things it's hard to divest, like yourself. You're not going to get rid of your garage. You have to have a place to have that regardless, and fire stations and fire equipment. There's very specific timelines that some of that equipment can be made. But again, the lease versus buy always gets factored in, as well as divesting of assets. So please rest assured that that is part and parcel.
Thank you. This is very important. Very good for us to hear as taxpayers and concerned citizens. I think we've sort of exhausted the asset management question, though, because there is one other item of business that we need to discuss. We do have one resignation from the committee. I'm sorry. We do have one resignation from the EDC, as I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting. I'm going to ask for guidance from the clerk on the wording of a motion that would request council that vacant seats on the EDC be filled.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. Because we just received this, I would say 3 o'clock-ish. It didn't quite make it on for discussion and consideration. So what we had talked about and what I recommend to the committee is putting it on as an agenda item for the next meeting, whether that means you guys talk about what the committee wants to do as far as filling it for recommendation to council, or whether you just want to leave it in council's hands to determine that. But I think it needs to have a more fulsome discussion. And because it was submitted too late, my recommendation is on the November 27th meeting agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll look for it on the November the 27th, and Terry Childs can start to get stage fright about that discussion. 24th. It is the 24th. It's the 27th. That's a weekend. Okay. But at least we know where we stand, even if we don't know what day it is. So that's good. Is there any other business? Councillor Fody.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. When the mayor touched on the word fire truck here a minute ago, it just jogged my memory. You may have seen on social media that our TLTI fire crews not just attained what we were looking for this past Saturday with regards to our underwriters for insurance, but they surpassed it. Excuse me, and surpassed it greatly, to the point the goal was to attain status as residential for insurance purpose. They surpassed by quite some margin the level of commercial, and what that means to the residents in close proximity, mileage, the way insurance underwriters I'm sure in your household, you can speak this well, but it does have repercussions in the sense of positivity, the reduced rates to residents, and likewise with business. This commercial designation will reciprocate through local businesses and a reduction of taxes on commercial level. So, you know, it was quite something to watch. I made it a point this past Saturday to be there and watch the whole procedure. I wanted to see how it went down. And I guess I picked a good year to show up because it was flawlessly done. I would suspect it involved roughly 30 of our firefighters to pull this off, besides all the chiefs, the captains, and everyone in attendance on the high end. Simultaneously, our fire training center was in full blowing mode on a training to outside firefighters from other jurisdictions that had pre-booked for both Saturday and Sunday. So it was quite an accomplishment for our fire department this past weekend, and Mother Nature helped. So
Excellent. Well, thank you for reminding us of that. That's very good news. It's good news for economic development. All right. Unless there's any other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. No one wants to go home? Moved by Chris Cunningham, seconded by Ray Belanger. Any discussion of the motion?